Raina Lockhart hit send and immediately wanted to throw her entire laptop out the window. "Wait, no, no, no," she gasped, watching the little paper plane icon disappear into the digital void. Her heart sank. That was not supposed to go to Nathaniel Turner. She stared at the screen in horror. She'd meant to send a resignation draft to her best friend for a sanity check. Instead, thanks to autocomplete, it went to the CEO of Turner Tech Industries, the company she'd just joined 2 weeks ago. "Oh God," she whispered, hands flying to her face. "I'm going to get fired before I even set up my voicemail." The email had been honest, too honest. It was a full-on emotional vent about her first 2 weeks in the job, how she felt invisible, how her ideas were ignored in meetings, how the team barely remembered her name. It wasn't meant to be seen by anyone at the top, especially not the man who practically owned the building, but there it was. Sent. Delivered. Raina closed her laptop, shoved it into her bag, and left the office without looking back. Nathaniel Turner reread the email for the 3rd time, a slow grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. It wasn't the kind of message he expected to find in his inbox on a Thursday night. He just wrapped a meeting in Tokyo via conference call and was mindlessly scrolling through flagged items when the subject line caught his eye. "For sanity purposes only. Do not judge." He'd opened it out of curiosity. Now he was stuck thinking about the girl who wrote it. She didn't hold back. She talked about feeling like a ghost in the company, how her marketing ideas were brushed off like she didn't exist, how she missed her old life where at least she felt seen. But what really got him was the way she ended it. "I know I'm a nobody here. But I still believe in this company. I just wish someone believed in me too." Nathaniel leaned back in his leather chair, still staring at the screen. He'd read thousands of reports, proposals, and corporate memos. But that email, that was the first time someone had spoken with raw honesty. It wasn't just the vulnerability that pulled him in. It was her fire, her hope buried under frustration. He clicked her name, Raina Lockhart, entry-level marketing associate, brown hair, bright hazel eyes in her ID photo, hired 2 weeks ago. Columbia grad, smart, quiet, overlooked, not anymore. The next morning, Raina kept her head down and prayed for invisibility. She avoided eye contact, especially with her supervisor, and definitely stayed away from the top floor where the CEO's office loomed like a glass fortress. She was halfway into her 3rd cup of coffee when her phone rang. "Raina Lockhart?" a crisp voice asked. "This is she. Mr. Turner would like a word, now." She nearly dropped her mug. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like the slowest descent into doom in history. When the doors opened, she was greeted by a sleek office with floor-to-ceiling windows, a skyline view of Manhattan, and a man behind a desk who looked like he belonged in a movie. Nathaniel Turner stood as she entered. Tall, sharp jaw, dark hair, a presence that made her forget how to breathe. "Miss Lockhart," he said, his voice smooth, rich, "please sit." I can explain," she blurted, clutching her bag. He raised a hand. "You don't need to, I read it." Her heart pounded. She braced herself for the firing, but instead of yelling, he smiled. "I liked it." She blinked. "You." "What?" Nathaniel walked around the desk, leaning casually against it. "That email was the most honest thing I've read all year, and you're right. You're not being seen. That's a problem. One I want to fix." She stared, confused. "I'm assigning you to a new project," he continued. "You'll be working directly with me on a campaign we're launching next month. You'll have full creative input." I don't understand. I thought you'd be mad." I was intrigued. His gaze locked onto hers. "Most people in this building tell me what they think I want to hear. You told me the truth." "That matters more than you realize," she swallowed. "So, I'm not fired," he chuckled. "Far from it." The next week was a blur. Suddenly, Raina was in meetings where people actually listened. Nathaniel gave her space to speak up, asked her questions, challenged her ideas, but always with a spark of encouragement. He didn't just pretend to care, he actually did. He saw her. And that was dangerous. Because now, every time he leaned over her shoulder to look at her screen, or offered a small smile across the boardroom table, her heart did things it had no business doing. She shouldn't be thinking about her boss like that. Especially not the billionaire CEO who could have anyone he wanted. But late one evening, when they stayed behind to finish a campaign brief, something shifted. She looked up from her notes and found him watching her. "What?" she asked, her voice soft. "You're different than I expected," he said. "Different how? More fire." His gaze didn't waver. "More heart." The silence stretched, her chest tightened, he stepped closer. "I've been thinking about that email." "Please don't," she groaned, covering her face. "No, listen." He gently pulled her hand away. "You said you wanted someone to believe in you," she froze. "I do," he said simply. "I believe in you, Raina." Her breath caught, and in that moment she realized he wasn't just intrigued by her words anymore, he was falling. And so was she. Raina tapped her pen against the edge of a porcelain saucer, trying not to stare at the man across the private conference table. The room wasn't on any company map, tucked behind a false wall on the 32nd floor like some kind of secret lair. There were no fluorescent lights here, just soft amber sconces, polished walnut paneling, and a quiet so complete she could hear the click of her own pulse. Nathaniel adjusted the cuffs of his navy shirt, the kind with silver cufflinks that probably cost more than her rent. "We'll be presenting to the board on Friday. I want you to handle the pitch." She blinked. "Me? You understand the heart of this campaign better than anyone," he said. "It should come from you. You don't think they'll wonder why someone so new is front and center? They'll wonder," he said. "Then they'll see you're the reason this works." She looked down at the folder in front of her. "You're trusting me with a lot. I wouldn't if I didn't think you could carry it." She didn't say thank you. She couldn't. Her throat tightened too much to speak. Instead, she nodded, then flipped open the folder. They went over the revised rollout plan in detail, but it was impossible to ignore the tension winding tighter with every quiet moment between them. Once, as she reached for a chart, her fingers brushed his. It wasn't the first time they'd touched, but this time felt like a current passed between them. He didn't move away. Neither did she. When the meeting ended, he didn't walk her to the elevator like before. Instead, he stopped her at the door with a single question. "What do you do when you're not holding up the entire marketing department?" Her laugh came out surprised. "Hold up, I'm pretty sure I'm still considered expendable." "Not to me." There was no teasing in his tone, just quiet certainty. She shifted her weight, unsure what to do with the heat building beneath her skin. "I raid," she said finally. "I cook when I'm stressed, and I run, mostly because it feels like the only time I'm not trying to prove something." He studied her for a long moment. "What do you raid?" "Fantasy." "Anything where the girl gets to save herself." A ghost of a grin tugged at his mouth, but he said nothing. Just nodded like he was filing that away somewhere important. That weekend, a package showed up at her apartment. No note. Just a first-edition novel with a single pressed wildflower tucked into the cover, wrapped in tissue paper that smelled faintly of cedar wood. She didn't have to guess who it was from. Monday came with more than the usual nerves. The board meeting loomed, and she'd barely slept. She arrived early, hair pulled back into a low twist, wearing the only suit she owned that didn't make her feel like she was borrowing someone else's armor. Nathaniel was already there, standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, hands in his pockets. "Good weekend?" he asked without turning. "Productive," she answered. "I rehearsed the pitch 6 times, once in the shower." He turned then, eyes meeting hers. "You don't need rehearsals, just speak like you did in that email." That email was a meltdown. That email was honest. "The most powerful thing in the room is always the truth." She inhaled slowly. "You're not worried I'll mess this up?" "I'm hoping you do," he said, stepping toward her. "Because then it won't be perfect. It'll be real." The boardroom was a long stretch of glass and steel with 12 people who looked like they belonged in paintings. Raina stood at the end of the table, palms flat against the lacquered wood, her voice steady as she walked them through the pitch. She didn't read from notes. She didn't try to sound impressive. She just told the story behind the campaign, what it meant, why it mattered, and how it could change the way the company connected with people. When she finished, there was a pause. Then a ripple of nods. One board member leaned forward and said, "That's the first time I've felt something in this room in a long time." Afterward, Nathaniel caught up with her in the hallway as she was heading back to her desk. "Come with me," he said. "I really should, it's important." She followed him down a corridor she'd never noticed before, past a door that required a thumbprint, and into what looked like a high-end lounge more than an office. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers. A leather couch faced a marble fireplace that flickered with gas flames. A bar cart gleamed in the corner. "This is your office?" she asked, stunned. "It's one of them." "Of course it is." He handed her a glass of water, then sat across from her. "You want to know why I brought you here, I mean?" "Yeah," he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Because I can't stop thinking about you," her breath caught. "That email got my attention," he continued. "But everything since then, watching you hold your ground, watching people finally wake up and realize what they've been overlooking, that's what keeps pulling me in." She looked down at her glass, fingers tightening around it. "Nathaniel, I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know," she nodded slowly. "I don't know how to do this." "You don't have to." When she left that room, everything felt different. The building was still glass and chrome, the people still moved too fast, but her world had shifted. And somewhere in the quiet between his words, her heart had started to shift too. Raina stood at the edge of the rooftop garden, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as the wind tugged at the hem of her jacket. The city glittered below like it belonged to someone else, someone who knew what to do with power and attention. Someone who didn't feel like they were standing on unsteady ground in every possible way. Behind her, footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. "You disappeared after the board meeting," Nathaniel said, stopping beside her. "I thought you'd be celebrating." "I needed air," he glanced at her. "You're not happy." "I am, I think," she exhaled, steadying her voice. "I just didn't expect any of this. A week ago, I was trying to figure out if I could stay here another month. Now I'm fielding questions from executives who didn't know I existed. You earned their attention." She looked out toward the skyline, refusing to meet his gaze. "It doesn't feel like mine." Nathaniel stepped closer, his voice softer now. "What are you afraid of?" "That none of it lasts," she said after a pause. "That the moment I let myself believe I belong, someone will remind me that I don't." He said nothing for a moment. "Then, you're not easily replaceable, Raina, not anymore." She finally turned to him. "Is that what this is about, making yourself feel better for giving me a chance?" "No," he said firmly. "This is about me not being able to stop wondering what it would be like to know you outside of calendars and launch schedules." She blinked, caught off guard. "I want to take you out," he said. She stared at him. "On a date." "You want to take me out on a date?" "Yes. I work for you, you work with me, there's a difference." "I don't know if it's that simple." "It isn't," he agreed, "but I'm willing to make it simple if you let me." Her stomach twisted with a dozen conflicting answers. Before she could choose one, a sudden burst of laughter echoed behind them. A group of junior associates had arrived on the roof for what looked like a farewell toast. Raina stepped back instinctively. "You should go. If someone sees—" "I don't care who sees," he interrupted. She shook her head. "I do." Later that evening, she sat alone in her apartment, pushing a fork through leftover pasta. Her phone buzzed, screen lighting up with a missed call from her mother. She let it go to voicemail. She wasn't ready for questions about work or why she sounded tired again. Instead, she opened the book he'd sent her, the one still sitting on her nightstand. The flower he'd tucked inside had dried and curled, delicate as ash. She turned a page and found a small card she hadn't seen before, tucked so precisely it must have slipped in unnoticed. It read, "Not everyone who sees your fire tries to put it out. Some of us want to watch it light the world." She closed the book slowly, heart pounding. The next day, she walked into the office and found a calendar invite waiting for her. No details, just a time and a location, the Lake Room. A private restaurant uptown she'd only ever read about in glossy magazines. She hesitated for a long moment, then clicked accept. That night, a black car waited at her curb. The driver held the door without a word. Inside, the seats were stitched leather, the kind that whispered wealth instead of shouting it. When she arrived, Nathaniel was already there, standing beneath a chandelier shaped like frozen rain. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, and looked like every decision came easy to him, until he saw her. Then his expression shifted, no cool detachment, no studied charm, just something raw and unguarded. "You came," he said. "You gave me a choice," she replied. "That matters." Dinner was unlike anything she'd known. The table was set with crystal and silver. The air smelled faintly of saffron and something richer beneath it. But none of it mattered compared to the way he looked at her. At one point, she set down her wine glass and said, "You know this is a bad idea, right?" "Yes. You know people will talk. They already do. And you're not worried." "I'm only worried you'll walk away before I show you this is real." She didn't answer. She couldn't. Not when everything inside her was unraveling at once. After dinner, he walked her to the car, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. Before she could step inside, he turned her gently toward him. "I don't want this to be something you regret," he said. "It's not," she whispered. "I'm just trying to catch up." He brushed a strand of hair from her temple. "Then I'll wait," she nodded, heart thundering. As the car pulled away, she looked back once. He was still standing there, watching her, hands in his pockets, as if he knew the ground had shifted for them both. And it had. Raina stepped into the atrium of the gala, her heels clicking quietly on the marble as she paused beneath the cascade of white lilies suspended from the ceiling. The room shimmered in tones of champagne and candlelight, and every guest looked like they'd stepped out of a curated spread in a luxury magazine. She shouldn't have been surprised. It was Turner Tech's annual innovation benefit. After all, but nothing prepared her for the sheer magnitude of the event. She didn't look for him, not immediately. She needed a moment to breathe, to remind herself that being invited didn't mean she didn't belong. "Raina." The voice found her first. She turned, her reply catching in her throat. Nathaniel stood at the base of the grand staircase, tailored in a deep indigo tuxedo that somehow made the room quiet around him. There was a sharpness to him tonight, not cold, but precise, as if he'd been cut from the skyline itself. "You came," he said, voice low as he approached. "I said I would." His gaze swept over her, not lingering, not obvious, but enough to tighten something in her chest. "I wanted you here," he said. "I figured," she replied. The hand-delivered invitation with my name embossed in gold foil was a subtle hint. He laughed quietly, and the sound warmed the space between them. "You're not here to be part of the crowd," he said. "You're here to be seen." Before she could respond, a woman in a crimson column gown appeared at Nathaniel's elbow. "Darling, the investors from Berlin just arrived." Raina's stomach flipped. The woman was striking, older, with a confidence that bordered on territorial. She didn't acknowledge Raina, just waited for Nathaniel to respond. "I'll be there in a moment," he said. The woman's eyes flicked to Raina, then, assessing. "Of course." She walked away without waiting for a response. Raina exhaled slowly. "She seems established. She's my father's former strategist. She's known me since I was barely out of prep school." "Well, she looks like she'd eat my resume for breakfast." Nathaniel's brow lifted slightly. "Are you intimidated? I'm realistic." He leaned in slightly. "She doesn't know what I know." Raina tilted her head. "Which is?" "That you're the only person in this room who makes me forget why I'm even here." Before she could shape a response, a hand clasped her shoulder. "Raina Lockhart?" a man asked, grinning. "I've been hearing your name all month." She turned to see an older executive, someone she recognized from quarterly reports but had never spoken to directly. "I'm on the advisory panel," he continued. "That campaign, brilliant. You flipped the engagement metric on its head." She managed a smile. "Thank you, it was a team effort." He raised a brow. "Modest, I like that." Nathaniel waited until the man moved on before stepping back beside her. "You've started a ripple," he said. "I don't know what I've started," she admitted. "But it feels like something I can't control." "That's the best kind of momentum," she paused. "I don't want to become someone I don't recognize." Nathaniel's jaw tightened slightly. "Then don't." But don't make yourself small just because the room is big." They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of conversation and clinking glasses surrounding them. "Come with me," he said. She followed him through a side door, down a velvet-lined hallway, and into a private terrace overlooking the East River. The city stretched out in front of them, alive, indifferent, beautiful. "I used to come out here when I couldn't breathe," he said, resting his hands on the railing. "When my father ran this company, he didn't leave space for mistakes, or for people like you, people like me, people who disrupt the pattern." She stepped beside him. "And what do you want to leave space for?" He looked at her. Something honest. Her heart beat faster. "Is this honest?" "I think it might be the only honest thing in my life right now," she hesitated. "I don't want to be a secret. You won't be. I don't want to be a statement either." "I'm not interested in making statements," he said. "I'm interested in you." She turned to face him, the words catching between fear and hope. "What happens when the campaign ends, when the next big thing comes along?" "I stay," he said simply. "You don't make promises." "I never have." "Until now." She studied him, searching for anything rehearsed or hollow, but there was only certainty. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "So am I." Then he stepped closer, and something between them shifted, no longer cautious, no longer waiting. He kissed her. Not with hesitation, but with the kind of conviction that made the world fall away. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't choreographed for an audience. It was real. And when he pulled back, his forehead resting lightly against hers, she felt a calm she hadn't known she'd been searching for. "I read your email every night for a week," he said. "Not because of what you said, but because it reminded me why I started this company." She closed her eyes, her voice unsteady. "I didn't mean to send it. I know." That's why it mattered. Later that month, a press release went out announcing a new leadership initiative inside Turner Tech 1, focused on nurturing unheard voices. At the bottom, buried beneath executive titles and sponsor logos, was a simple line: "Concept development led by marketing associate Raina Lockhart." She read it in her apartment, curled up with a mug of tea and the book he'd given her. The one that still held the dried flower, now pressed beneath glass in a frame on her shelf. When the doorbell rang, she opened it to find Nathaniel holding a small box. "No tuxedo this time," he said. "Just dinner. And something I want you to have." Inside the box was a key. "To what?" she asked. He smiled, not the public kind, the real one. "To the place I go when I want to breathe." She looked up at him, heart full. "Let's see if we can disrupt a few more patterns together," he added. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she had to prove she belonged. She already did. Raina slipped the final mock-up into the presentation folder, aligning the edges with the careful precision of someone who knew exactly how much was riding on it. The new mentorship program was launching next week, and this proposal was the last hurdle. She straightened her spine as she stood, adjusting the pearl button on her blazer cuff. The woman staring back at her from the mirror in the conference room wasn't the same girl who'd typed a desperate email 2 months ago. A soft knock on the glass made her turn. Nathaniel leaned against the doorframe, his tie loosened just enough to suggest he wasn't there as the CEO. He didn't speak until she stepped toward him. "They've already approved it," he said. She blinked. "What?" "The board signed off this morning. I wanted you to hear it from me." Her breath caught, not from shock but from the surge of something deeper. This wasn't just a project. It was the beginning of something lasting, something she'd built with her voice. "You should have told me sooner," she said. "I wanted to see your face when you realized you did it." She laughed under her breath. "You're impossible." He stepped closer. "Only for everyone else." She tilted her head. "So what now? Another campaign, another gala, or do we finally take a weekend off?" "I'm thinking something quieter." "Like what?" "I bought a house." She blinked again. "You what?" "Upstate, near the lake. Secluded, but close enough to the city if you get bored." She crossed her arms, brow lifted. "You bought a house." "I've been looking for months. This one felt right. It has a big kitchen, a wraparound porch, and a room that would be perfect for an office." "Yours if you want it." She stared at him, trying to form words. "Are you asking me to move in?" I'm asking you to build something with me, not just presentations and pitches. A life. Her throat tightened. You don't do things halfway, do you? I never did. I just didn't have the right reason until now. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught, but he didn't open it. Not yet. I'm not asking you to say yes to forever tonight. I'm asking you to say yes to now, to this next step. To us. She took the box from his hand, her fingers trembling. You're serious. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. She opened it slowly. Inside was a gold ring, simple, elegant, and unlike anything she'd ever imagined for herself. No diamonds, no spectacle. Just a band of warmth and promise. I don't need time, she whispered. Yes. His arms wrapped around her instantly, and for a long moment there was no world beyond the curve of his shoulder or the steady beat of his heart against hers. Later, they walked through the empty halls of the office together. It was after midnight, and the city beyond the windows pulsed with muted light. He stopped by the elevator, his hand still resting in hers. You know, she said, I used to think people like you didn't see people like me. I didn't, he admitted, until you made sure I did. She turned to face him. I didn't mean to. That's why it mattered. They stood there for a long moment, the quiet between them filled with the kind of peace that doesn't come from silence but from understanding. Weeks later, the lake house came alive with the scent of cinnamon and fresh paint. Raina stood barefoot in the middle of the kitchen, rolling out dough while Nathaniel assembled a bookshelf in the den. Every window was open, the breeze carrying the sounds of birds and distant water lapping against the dock. You're doing it wrong, she called. No, I'm doing it my way. That's not a real defense. It is when you're building a crooked bookshelf for a woman who reads fantasy novels about warrior queens. She laughed, brushing flour from her cheek. He walked into the kitchen and wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. This is the part I never knew I needed. What, mornings like this, you, here, dough on your nose, telling me I'm wrong. She leaned into him. You are, I know. They stayed like that, swaying slightly as the sunlight poured in across the wooden floor. Later that evening, they sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, a glass of wine between them and the stars scattered above like promises. He kissed her temple, then her cheek, then her lips slow, reverent, like every moment still surprised him. I used to think I needed control to breathe, he murmured, and now, I just need you. She smiled against his chest. Guess that email did more than just cause a panic attack. It changed everything. And it had. Not just for her, not just for him, but for the way they saw the world. Together they'd built something unexpected, something honest, something that would last. They didn't need a million eyes to see it. They just needed each other.